There is something truly remarkable about a woman who chooses not to live by the standards imposed upon her, but instead writes her own rules. Society often hands her a script: how to look, how to behave, what to study, whom to marry, how to live. But when she picks up the pen and decides, this is my story, and I will write it my way, she becomes unstoppable. Such a woman doesn't reject tradition just to rebel. She respects wisdom, but she also questions blind conformity. She doesn't compare her journey with others because she knows her path is unique. She understands that if she waits for permission to live, she will never truly live. The woman who writes her own rules is not careless. She is careful, but she is fearless. She may stumble, but she turns her wounds into wisdom. She may be misunderstood, but she knows that leaders are always questioned before they are celebrated. Her strength is not just in breaking barriers, but in building bridges between her dreams and reality, between her values and her vision. And while the world may try to fit her into a box, she gently reminds everyone that boxes are for things, not for people. When such a woman rises, she inspires not only herself, but every soul who watches her. She teaches us that courage is contagious and authenticity is magnetic. She becomes living proof that greatness is not given, it is chosen. Freedom is one of the most powerful words in human history, yet so often misunderstood. Many think freedom simply means breaking away from restrictions, running wild without care, or doing everything without discipline. But true freedom has a deeper meaning. It is not the absence of responsibility, it is the presence of choice. And when a woman decides to write her own rules, she redefines what freedom truly is in her life. From the moment she is born, society surrounds her with expectations. People tell her what kind of daughter she should be, how she should speak, how she should dress, how she should act. As she grows, those expectations multiply. What career is considered appropriate, who she should marry, how she should balance family and work, and even how she should dream. Slowly, if she is not careful, she can start living a life that looks perfect from the outside, but feels empty on the inside. That is not freedom. That is captivity dressed in polite clothes. But a woman who writes her own rules refuses to be caged in by invisible walls. She redefines freedom, not as rebellion, but as the ability to live a life that resonates with her inner truth. She understands that freedom is not about doing what everyone else is doing, but about aligning her actions with her values. She doesn't chase validation from others. She finds fulfillment in being authentic. Her definition of freedom is not selfish. In fact, it is deeply responsible, because when she chooses her path, she is not careless about its consequences. She doesn't seek freedom at the cost of hurting others unnecessarily. Instead, she seeks freedom that liberates her while allowing her to honor her principles. For her, freedom is the balance between courage and wisdom, between strength and compassion. Imagine a woman who chooses a career that no one in her family understands. Everyone questions her, why don't you choose something safer? Or, why don't you follow the same path others have followed? But she knows that safety without satisfaction is simply slow suffocation. She writes her own rules. She studies, she works hard, she proves herself not for applause, but for peace of mind. That is freedom. Or think of a woman who decides not to be rushed into marriage simply because society insists it is time. She doesn't disrespect the institution. She simply respects herself enough to wait for what feels right. She redefines freedom as the ability to say no to timelines that don't align with her heart. That too is freedom. Such a woman shows us that freedom is not about choosing the easier road. It is about choosing the right road, even if it is longer, lonelier, or filled with obstacles. She knows she may be judged, but she also knows that every great soul in history was once misunderstood. Freedom is not handed to her. It is created by her choices, her resilience, and her courage to keep walking her path. And in this redefinition, something extraordinary happens. Other women watching her suddenly realize that they too have the power to choose. Her courage becomes their courage. Her authenticity gives them permission to be authentic. She becomes living proof that freedom is not just a right we are given. It is a gift we give ourselves when we dare to live by our own rules. Every person is handed a script the moment they enter this world. It is written not on paper, but in the whispers of society, the opinions of relatives, the lessons of culture, and the silent pressures of tradition. For a woman, this script is often very detailed. It tells her what is acceptable, what is respectable, and what is predictable. It suggests what she should study, when she should marry, how she should balance her home, and even what dreams are considered too big for her to chase. If she simply follows this script without question, she may live a life that pleases others, but leaves her own heart restless. But the woman who writes her own rules refuses to surrender her future to this pre-written script. She listens to the world, yes, but she does not allow the world to make her choices. She has the wisdom to hear, but also the courage to filter. She understands that advice is valuable, but only when it aligns with her inner truth. And so, she begins to edit the script that was handed to her, not out of arrogance, but out of awareness that her life is her responsibility. This kind of woman is not reckless. She does not discard tradition just for the thrill of it. Rather, she questions it with respect. She asks, does this path help me grow, or does it limit me? Does this decision nourish my soul, or does it suffocate me? And when she finds that the script society gave her does not match the vision in her heart, she begins to rewrite it slowly, firmly, and unapologetically. Consider the young girl who is told she must choose a safe career because society says it is respectable. Perhaps she dreams of being an artist, an entrepreneur, a leader, or a scientist in a field that no one in her family has ventured into. Society whispers, that is not for you. Stay in the lane we have prepared for you. But this woman smiles and replies silently to herself, your lane is not my lane. My journey is not your journey. She studies, she struggles, she falls and rises, but she stays loyal to her calling. And in time, she doesn't just succeed in her field. She sets an example that others begin to follow. Or think of the woman who is told that her worth is defined by marriage, children, or the approval of others. Society hands her the script of timelines. By this age, you should have achieved this. By this time, you should be here. But she knows that rushing into milestones that don't feel true will only lead to regret. So she refuses to let pressure dictate her future. She chooses to walk at her own pace, to create a future built not on fear, but on faith in her own vision. What makes her powerful is not that she rejects society. It's that she reclaims authorship of her own life. She understands that the loudest voices around her are not always the wisest. She knows that while others may clap for her obedience, only her soul can clap for her authenticity. And so, she chooses authenticity over applause. And when she does, something magical happens. People who once doubted her begin to admire her. The same society that tried to hand her a script starts quoting her as inspiration. Because the truth is, history has never remembered those who followed the script. It has only remembered those who rewrote it. The woman who writes her own rules lives in such a way that she becomes a story worth telling, a light worth following, and a future worth believing in. There is a difference between living and merely existing. To live fully is to question, to reflect, to choose with awareness. To merely exist is to follow without thinking, to accept without asking, to obey without understanding. Many people are trapped in the cycle of blind conformity. They do things not because they believe in them, but because that's how it has always been done. They follow traditions, habits, and rules without asking themselves, does this really make sense to me? Does this resonate with who I am? But the woman who writes her own rules refuses to walk blindly in the footsteps of others. She questions, not out of arrogance, not to rebel for the sake of rebellion, but because she understands that growth only happens when we reflect deeply. She does not believe in breaking everything apart just to prove a point. She believes in honoring wisdom. But she also knows that wisdom is only wisdom when it stands the test of truth. And so, instead of conforming without thought, she chooses authenticity. Authenticity is not about being loud. It is not about being dramatic. It is about being real. It is about living in alignment with your values, even when the world wants you to adjust them for convenience. This kind of woman realizes that it is easy to wear a mask to please others, but it is exhausting to live behind that mask. So she chooses to remove it, even if it means some people will not like the face they see. Think of the woman who is told, this is how you must look to be accepted. The magazines, the advertisements, the voices around her dictate her worth through beauty standards she never agreed to. Conformity would mean forcing herself into those molds, chasing validation in appearances that are temporary. But authenticity tells her, you are enough. Your worth is not skin deep. Your value is not measured by numbers or filters. And so, she chooses to embrace herself, to be confident, not because she fits a standard, but because she has the courage to set her own. Or think of the woman who is told, this is how a good daughter, wife, or mother behaves. These roles are noble. But when society expects her to erase her identity for the sake of these titles, she knows that conformity will leave her hollow. She asks, how can I serve my family, my work, my community without losing myself? And so, she chooses authenticity, living her roles with love, but never at the cost of her individuality. Such a woman understands that questioning does not mean disrespect. A river questions the rocks in its path, not because it hates them, but because it must carve its own flow. Likewise, she questions blindly accepted norms, not to insult her culture, but to enrich it with thoughtfulness. She realizes that traditions have value, but only when they uplift rather than suppress. When she walks in authenticity, her steps may be slower, but they are steady. She may not have the crowd's approval at first, but she has peace in her heart. And that peace radiates. People begin to see that her life has depth, not just decoration. They begin to notice that she is not swayed by trends, but rooted in truth. And in choosing thoughtful authenticity, she lights a path for others. She silently teaches that real strength is not in being what others want you to be, but in having the courage to be who you are meant to be. Her life becomes a reminder that masks may win applause, but authenticity wins respect. And respect lasts far longer than applause ever will. One of the greatest traps of modern life is comparison. We live in a world where people constantly measure themselves against others, comparing looks, wealth, careers, relationships, and even happiness. It's almost as if self-worth has become a competition, and joy has become a scoreboard. But the woman who writes her own rules refuses to fall into this endless cycle. She knows that comparison is the thief of joy, and so she chooses a different path. She embraces her uniqueness. Uniqueness is not always celebrated in society. From childhood, many are told to fit in, to be everyone else, to blend with the crowd. But blending only makes you invisible. The woman who embraces her uniqueness realizes that she was never meant to be a copy. She was born an original and living as an original means she doesn't waste her energy competing with someone else's timeline or achievements. She understands that flowers do not compete, they simply bloom. The sun does not rush to outshine the moon. Each has its moment. Likewise, she knows her life has its own rhythm, its own timing, and its own beauty. Imagine a young woman watching her peers achieve milestones. Someone is buying a house. Someone else is getting married. Another is traveling the world. It is so easy for her to feel like she is falling behind. But this woman whispers to herself, I am not behind. I am on my own path. My story is unfolding exactly as it should. And that awareness gives her peace. She celebrates others without jealousy because their success does not threaten her own. Or think of the woman who works in a field where competition is fierce. She sees colleagues climbing ladders faster, getting recognition quicker. She could spend her life comparing herself, resenting their progress. But instead, she asks, what makes me different? What strengths do I bring? How can I shine in a way that no one else can? By focusing on her uniqueness, she creates a space for herself that cannot be replicated. Embracing uniqueness does not mean ignoring growth. It does not mean settling. It means realizing that growth is most powerful when it is authentic. This woman grows not by imitating others, but by developing her own gifts, her own vision, her own voice. She knows that if she spends her whole life trying to be someone else, she will succeed only in becoming a poor copy. But if she dares to be herself, she will always be a masterpiece. She also understands that comparison blinds gratitude. When you are constantly looking at what others have, you fail to appreciate what you hold in your own hands. By embracing her uniqueness, she learns to value her own blessings. The skills, the opportunities, the challenges that shaped her. She realizes that even her struggles are unique, and within those struggles lie lessons tailored just for her. And as she embraces this uniqueness, she starts radiating confidence. Not the loud kind that demands attention, but the quiet, unshakable confidence that comes from knowing who you are. People around her notice. They begin to admire her not because she fits a mold, but because she dares to live outside of it. Her choice to embrace uniqueness instead of comparison frees her. She is not weighed down by envy or insecurity. She walks with dignity, knowing that her worth is not measured against anyone else. And in doing so, she teaches others that life is not a race, it is a journey. Some move fast, some move slow, some take winding paths, but each journey is sacred. Her example reminds everyone that the real victory in life is not in beating others, but in becoming the best version of yourself. Life often conditions us to wait. From childhood, we wait for the teacher's approval before speaking, for the parents' permission before deciding, for society's blessing before living. This habit slowly seeps into adulthood, where many women unconsciously begin to live in a cage built not of iron, but of invisible permissions. They wait for someone to say, yes, you're ready. Yes, you can dream. Yes, you can choose differently. But the woman who writes her own rules realizes something profound. Waiting for permission is just another form of prison. She understands that if she waits for everyone to approve her choices, she will be waiting forever. Because there will always be someone who disapproves, always someone who doubts, always someone who questions her capacity. And if she allows their hesitation to dictate her actions, her life will remain on pause while the years quietly pass by. So instead of waiting, she decides. Instead of asking, she acts. Instead of depending on approval, she creates her own validation. Consider the woman with a dream to start a business. She shares her idea with friends, and they laugh. She shares it with relatives, and they warn her, "It's risky. What if you fail? Why don't you take a safer job?" If she waits for their permission, her idea will die in silence. But if she trusts herself, takes the risk, and begins, her business may stumble, but it may also soar. And whether she succeeds or fails, she is free because she acted on her own conviction. Or think of the woman who wants to choose a life partner, not based on societal expectations, but on genuine connection and respect. If she waits for every voice around her to agree, she may never move forward. But she knows that her heart deserves its own voice. She realizes that permission from others cannot guarantee happiness. Only authenticity can. And so, she makes her choice with courage, not waiting for the nod of approval that may never come. This refusal to wait for permission is not recklessness, it is responsibility. Because she understands that her life is her responsibility alone. If she succeeds, she will carry the joy. If she fails, she will carry the lessons. Either way, she will not carry the regret of never trying. Regret is the heaviest prison of all, and she is determined never to live behind its bars. When she stops waiting for permission, something extraordinary happens. She becomes a leader, not by title, but by example. Others around her, who have been hesitating in their own lives, see her courage and think, if she can step forward without approval, maybe I can too. Her decision to break free becomes a key that unlocks the cages of others. She also learns that those who truly love her do not need her to ask for permission. They support her even when they don't fully understand her. And those who demand control over her choices, she realizes their permission is not worth seeking, because love never cages, it only empowers. This woman knows that time is too precious to waste on waiting. Every day spent asking for permission is a day lost from the life she could be building. And so, she chooses action over hesitation, conviction over doubt, freedom over permission. She understands that the world may never be fully ready for her choices, but she will no longer delay her destiny just to make others comfortable. Failure is a word many people fear. It carries with it the weight of shame, disappointment, and judgment. From an early age, we are taught to avoid it at all costs, to measure success only by victories, and to hide our defeats as if they make us unworthy. But the woman who writes her own rules views failure differently. She knows that courage is not found in running away from failure, but in embracing it, learning from it, and transforming it into wisdom. This kind of woman does not measure her life by how many times she avoids falling, but by how many times she rises after a fall. She understands that failure is not the opposite of success. It is a stepping stone toward it. Every time she fails, she gains knowledge that no book or lecture could have given her. Every setback becomes her teacher. Every mistake becomes a mirror that reflects the areas she needs to grow in. Instead of hiding her failures, she uses them as a foundation for resilience. Consider the woman who starts a project with great excitement. She invests her time, her effort, even her heart into it, but the project doesn't go as planned. The doors she expected to open remain closed. People criticize her and whisper, "She failed." She feels the sting, but instead of burying herself in shame, she asks, "What did this teach me? How can I grow stronger from this?" By asking those questions, she turns her failure into a classroom and herself into the student who never stops learning. Or imagine the woman who opens her heart to a relationship, giving love with sincerity, only to face heartbreak. Many would close their hearts forever, fearing the pain of another disappointment, but she chooses differently. She takes the lessons of trust, patience, and self-respect from the pain. She realizes that love is not about never being hurt, but about loving with wisdom gained from past experiences. That heartbreak, instead of breaking her, refines her. She also knows that failure builds humility. Success alone can sometimes create pride, but failure teaches empathy. It softens her, makes her more understanding of others' struggles, and allows her to inspire with authenticity. When she speaks about perseverance, she speaks from scars, not from theory, and that makes her voice powerful. The world often laughs at those who stumble, but she understands that those who laugh today may one day applaud her strength. Because history is filled with people who turn their failures into triumphs. Every great innovator, leader, or change maker faced rejection, doubt, and defeat before they were celebrated. She reminds herself that if failure is part of their story, it can be part of hers too. Her courage lies not in pretending she never falls, but in showing that falling is not the end. It is a bend in the road, not the finish line. She walks forward with the wisdom that failure gave her, and this wisdom makes her unstoppable. The same obstacles that once seemed like walls now appear as stepping stones. By transforming failure into wisdom, she proves something profound. You cannot control whether you fall, but you can control whether you rise. And when she rises taller, stronger, and wiser than before. That is her real victory, not the absence of failure, but the transformation of it. Criticism is something no one enjoys. It stings, it unsettles, and it often lingers in the heart longer than praise. But the woman who writes her own rules has learned a vital truth. Criticism is not always a curse. It is often a sign. It is a sign that she is moving, that she is visible, that she is walking a path bold enough to be noticed. She understands that those who dare to step out of the crowd will always invite opinions from the crowd. If she lived quietly within the script society handed her, if she never questioned, never stood out, never tried something new, people would have nothing to say. Silence often follows those who blend in. But the moment she chooses a different direction, the moment she begins to shine, voices rise. Some admire, but others criticize. And instead of shrinking under those voices, She sees them as confirmation that she is no longer invisible. Think of the woman who starts building a dream that others consider impossible. At first, they dismiss her. It won't work. Who does she think she is? But she keeps going. Then they mock her. She's wasting her time, yet she continues. Eventually, the same voices that criticized her begin to change, whispering, "Look at how far she's come." What once was criticism slowly transforms into admiration. She knows this cycle, and that is why she does not let early negativity stop her. Or imagine a woman who speaks up for what she believes in, a workplace, a family, a community. At first, her honesty may not be welcomed. People may say she is too bold, too opinionated, too different. But she understands that the price of silence is greater than the discomfort of criticism. She would rather face disapproval than live with regret for not standing for what mattered. Criticism also teaches her discernment. Not every critical voice is harmful. Some contain lessons. She listens carefully. She asks herself, is there truth here that can help me grow? Or is this simply noise from someone projecting their own fears? By filtering criticism, she takes what is constructive and ignores what is destructive. This balance keeps her humble without letting her lose confidence. She also realizes that criticism often says more about the critic than about her. When people see someone breaking boundaries, it exposes their own insecurities. Instead of facing their limitations, they find it easier to point at hers. She does not internalize their doubts. She reminds herself, their words reflect their world, not mine. The woman who writes her own rules transforms criticism into fuel. Every harsh word becomes motivation to keep moving. Every doubt spoken against her becomes a reminder of the importance of her mission. She understands that if no one is speaking against her, perhaps she isn't making enough impact. After all, the waves that disturb the sea are proof of movement. And when she continues despite the criticism, she eventually earns something more valuable than applause. She earns respect. Even her harshest critics cannot ignore her persistence. They may not like her choices, but they cannot deny her strength. In time, they may even become silent admirers, inspired by the very courage they once condemned. This woman walks with the awareness that criticism is not the end of her journey. It is part of it. She wears it as evidence that she is alive, active, and brave enough to be seen. To her, criticism is not a wall that blocks her, but a mirror that shows she is on a path that matters. And so, instead of fearing it, she welcomes it as a companion on her road to greatness. Dreams are beautiful. They are the seeds of change, the spark that lights a new possibility. But dreams alone, without action, remain floating clouds. They inspire for a moment, then drift away. Similarly, values are powerful. But unless they are tied to vision and practice, they become words written on paper rather than principles lived in reality. The woman who writes her own rules knows this deeply. She does not only dream, she builds bridges between dreams and actions. She does not only hold values, she connects them to vision, making them visible in her daily life. For her, life is not about endless wishing, it is about alignment. She knows that a dream without discipline is just a fantasy. And a value without practice is just a slogan. That is why she focuses not just on what she wants, but on what she is willing to do to get there. She refuses to sit in the comfort of imagination forever. Instead, she asks herself, what steps can I take today that will bring me closer to where I want to be tomorrow? Consider the woman who dreams of becoming an author. Many people dream the same, but they wait for the perfect time, the perfect opportunity, the perfect inspiration. She, on the other hand, starts writing. Even if the words are not perfect, she puts them on paper. She turns hours into pages, pages into chapters, chapters into a book. What separates her from the rest is not the dream itself, but the bridge she built between dream and action. Or imagine the woman who values kindness, integrity, or fairness. Many claim these values, but she chooses to live them daily. If she values kindness, she shows it not just in big gestures, but in small, consistent actions. Listening with patience, offering encouragement, helping where she can. If she values integrity, she practices honesty even when it costs her something. If she values fairness, she defends those who cannot speak for themselves. Her values are not hidden in her heart. They are seen in her behavior. This woman also understands that the bridge between dreams and actions is built with persistence. One action is not enough. It is the repeated steps, the daily commitment, the quiet consistency that turns a fragile bridge into a strong one. She is not discouraged if progress feels slow. She knows that steady drops of water carve valleys, and steady steps create legacies. By building these bridges, she also creates alignment within herself. Her actions match her words, her choices reflect her beliefs, her lifestyle echoes her values. This harmony gives her peace. She does not live in the frustration of contradiction, where one says one thing but does another. She lives in the freedom of authenticity, where her inner world and outer world walk hand in hand. And because she builds these bridges, she inspires others to do the same. People who only dream begin to see the importance of action. People who only speak values begin to see the power of living them. She becomes proof that greatness does not come from dreams alone, but from the courage to walk across the bridge between vision and reality. For her, life is not about waiting for miracles. Life itself is the miracle, and every step she takes toward her dreams, every action she aligns with her values, strengthens the bridge she is building. One day, when she looks back, she sees not just dreams she once imagined, but realities she created, because she dared to build, not just dream,